Bees. Your dog's stomach is full of bees.
Hi and welcome back to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I'm looking at a whole bunch of weird cult films that I've been watching over the last couple of weeks. Now bear with me this time because I've got a bit of a sinus infection. My throat's just a little bit raw. It's not the spicy cough, it's just a little bit of a kind of head thing, which sounded wrong. But anyway, let's move on. I had to watch these movies because the pile of things to watch that I haven't watched yet was getting crazy high, and then I got sucked into watching movies that were available on YouTube. It turned into a big traffic jam of discs and downloads, and I found some weird stuff, and some of it's good, some of it's not, some of it is kind of bad but entertaining. So let's get on with it. First thing I've got is a movie called Ants, which is an American TV film from 1977. The other name for it, which sounds a little bit like it might be a romantic Hallmark comedy, is It Happened at Lakewood Manor. It was one of those TV movies that was riding off the back of Nature Goes Wild films that were getting very popular. William Girdler's Day of the Animals and things like that. There were a few of these on American TV at the time. There was another one called, I think, Tarantula's Deadly Cargo. There's another one I'm going to talk about as well. But they're fun. I mean, they're light. The acting in them is no better than it needs to be. And it was part of that machine that American TV had, where TV networks, in this case ABC, had to churn out a whole bunch of product for their TV movie market. They threw a little bit of money at various things, got them made cheaply in Canada, threw in a whole bunch of actors they already had under contract. People are starting to reevaluate these movies now. This one has got a pretty good cast. Robert Foxworth, who was in the Questa tapes, plays a guy called Mike Carr who visits a resort called Lakewood House, which is owned by Myrna Loy. Yes, Myrna Loy from way back in the 1930s. This was her last film. And there's a whole bunch of people in the supporting cast. You've got Bernie Casey, Barry Van Dyke, Dick Van Dyke's son, Steve Franken, who was in The Time Travelers, amongst other things. Brian Dennehy turns up as well in a minor role as a fire chief, because your go-to role for Brian Dennehy any time during his career was being a fire chief. So the story is that there's this old, dying resort by a lake called Lakewood Hotel, oddly enough. And two construction workers are working in a ditch there, and get attacked by a swarm of ants. Now, the stunt work in this bit is great because the two workers get buried under a pile of dirt from a bulldozer while they're kind of trying to stop themselves getting eaten by ants. And apparently the stunt worker, that was really, really difficult to do. They had to get a garden hose to breathe through once they got buried in this dirt. So props to the stuntman in this one. They uncover a whole bunch of ants who have been affected by pollution and have become very poisonous. You get bitten by the ants, you die, is pretty much the way it goes. None of this anaphylaxis stuff. Pure 100%. Get bitten by 100 ants and you get poisoned. Get bitten by 5 ants and you get poisoned. So that's the general thing, and it turns into a kind of weird, messed up combination of The Naked Jungle and any kind of 1970s TV movie. Not to be taken seriously, but the stunt work's pretty good, the acting is fairly good, and they have a whole bunch of kind of characters that are very lightly sketched. There's a real estate developer who's taking his assistant, played by Suzanne Summers, with him to try to buy the resort, and his girlfriend gets eaten by the ants unexpectedly. Everybody gets trapped in the resort and has to go higher and higher into the resort to avoid these ants. Finally, they try to rescue them with a fireman's ladder. That kind of a movie. And I kind of liked it. I think it's very much of its time. The acting is personable. Nobody's particularly a focal character in this movie. It's more like a combination of The Naked Jungle and The Towering Inferno, because everybody has to keep rising above where the threat is. And that guess it's got a certain charm to it, let's say. I kind of like what it does with this one. That one's available all over YouTube. So if you want to look up either Ants or It Happened at Lakewood Manor, you're going to have a good time in a very low-key 1970s American TV movie kind of way. But I couldn't leave it there. I had to do another one. So the other one I did was a thing called The Savage Bees from 1976. So it's a year earlier than Ant, otherwise known as It Happened at Lakewood Manor. This one I like a little bit better because it's got a better cast. Ben Johnson, 5 years after he wins a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for The Last Picture Show, turns up as a sheriff, because, again, you're either going to get Ben Johnson to play a cowboy or a sheriff. He's very much a stereotyped actor. But he does pretty good in this one. He actually brings some A-game acting to it. You've got a local doctor played by Michael Parks. Now, people know Michael Parks from any number of things. He was Adam in that movie about the Bible. He was also in a TV series called Then Came Bronson, which I kind of like. And then Quentin Tarantino rediscovered him, in a sense, in the 1990s, and he turns up in the Kill Bill movies. He turned up in From Dusk Till Dawn. And yeah, I like Michael Parks. He's a really fine actor. Only actor to play two different roles in the Kill Bill duology. And I'll leave you to find out what they are if you don't know. We've also got Gretchen Corbett, nice character actress. Horst Buchholz from The Magnificent Seven turns up playing a specialist in bees. And so the story is this. Africanized bees are attacking New Orleans during Mardi Gras. They're attracted to the color red. That's one of the things. Because you always got to have like a specialized thing about the threat, whatever it is, what it's attracted to. And they started attacking kind of regional areas in Louisiana. They kill a young black girl, which was horrible. And this doctor and Gretchen Corbett's character and the sheriff are trying to find out what's happening and to keep people away from the bees. And they don't know whether any particular bee swarm they see or bee hive they see is the dangerous bees, which kill people really quickly, or whether it's just normal bees. So there's a few kind of red herrings in there as well. Filmed on location and really well filmed too. The director was a guy called Gordon Trueblood, who did a lot of TV movies at the time. So the best bit is the ending, the climax where they get rid of this swarm of deadly savage bees. What happens is Gretchen Corbett's character has a red VW bug, because it's a bug. The bees, because it's red, are attracted and cover her VW bug. All of the Africanized bees basically swarm over her VW. And so the heroes slowly encourage her to drive the car really slowly because you don't want to lose any of these bees, into New Orleans and into a great big football stadium, which I think was the one that everybody took shelter in Katrina. So she's got to drive this VW bug covered in bees all the way into New Orleans and all the way into this football stadium. They shut the door and they take the temperature down below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, because the bees die or go to sleep or something like that when it happens. So you've got this really interesting and bugfuck crazy kind of suspense building up as these bees slowly get carried into New Orleans and into a football stadium. You've got to see it to believe it, and the character actors in it really sell it. I mean, Michael Parks is good, Gretchen Corbett's good, Horst Buchholz is in there for a little while. His bee-proof suit doesn't quite work for him, so spoiler, he gets killed. But it's one of those kind of low-budget, very contained catastrophes, which works because they used what was available at the time. Apparently, they did use a lot of real bees, and nobody got stung because the bee handlers were that good in this movie. But you can find the savage bees all over YouTube if you look around. It won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Film Sound Mixing, because I think it's all the buzzing from the bees. There was a sequel as well called Terror Out of the Sky, which had Efren Zimbalist Jr., Lonnie Chapman, Ike Eisenman, Richard Hurd, Charles Hallahan. Steve Franken comes back again in that one. But I haven't seen the sequel. But yeah, the Savage Bees kind of worked. I liked it. It's got that 1970s American television movie aesthetic about it. But it does some crazy things, dragging a whole swarm of bees outside on a VW bug into a place where you can kill them. Is a kind of interesting way of doing it. They didn't want to bomb the bees, of course, because some of them might have escaped and then everything goes crazy again. It's just got a weird and wonderful concept which ends really nicely. The next one I've got turned up in any number of those 10-pack kind of suspense and science fiction box sets that were out about a decade and a half ago. But it turned up most recently in an Arrow video compilation, Weird Wisconsin, the Bill Rebane collection. Now, this one I picked up fairly cheaply It's got a whole bunch of movies. It's got The Game, Invasion from Inner Earth, Twister's Revenge, Monster A Go-Go, The Demons of Ludlow. So it's all about Bill Rebane, a guy who worked out of Wisconsin and made low-budget films. And the one I saw is called The Alpha Incident. Like many low-budget films at the time, it's, again, one of those kind of cozy catastrophe kind of situations. A space probe comes back from Mars, and it's carrying a deadly organism that has lethal potentiality to destroy all life on Earth. I'm reading this off Wikipedia. It's being transported across America by train and gets released by a kind of train worker played by George Buck Flowers, who was your go-to redneck in the 1970s. This is a 1978 movie. And he gets contaminated, of course, and everybody on the train gets quarantined along with a government scientist. So they're trapped in a kind of a cabin thing out in the wilderness. Meanwhile, a couple of scientists, one of whom's played by an actor called John Alderman, who did a lot of softcore porn in the 1970s. He was in The Erotic Adventures of Zorro, amongst other things, and very familiar face to those of us who watch those kind of movies. So there are these two scientists trying to figure out what to do about it. Meanwhile, a group of people are trapped in this place, and they all are possibly infected with this alien organism, one of whom is played by Ralph Meeker from Kiss Me Deadly. Older Ralph Meeker, who had a career downturn, obviously. He plays a guy called Charlie. There's nobody else besides George Buck Flowers, Ralph Meeker, and John Alderman that anybody would ever recognise. So everybody's trapped in there, and they're not allowed to fall asleep, because if you fall asleep, this organism, using the different chemicals in your brain when you fall asleep, will replicate and your head will explode. No, I'm not kidding there. That's what happens. It happens to Ralph Meeker's character. So they basically have them isolated in a certain place. They give them lots of amphetamines, which is always a recipe for cohesion in a small group of people. And they've got to stay awake until a cure is found. Now, I love the concept of this. It's mad. And Ralph Meeker's character kind of does a nice professional job of it, but the other actors, not so much. There's one woman whom a couple of different guys are interested in. Yeah, she has an interesting, if really poorly done, story arc to do with whether she sleeps with one or two of the guys and that kind of thing. It's a weird little film, and what it kind of combines is the Andromeda Strain with Night of the Living Dead, and the ending reflects a lot of the Night of the Living Dead. But I kind of like what it does. I like the fact that Bill Rebane wasn't crazy talented, but he had this passion to make small movies. And he made a number of them. He made enough of them to get a box set from Arrow Films. Yeah, this isn't a great movie. It runs 95 minutes, and maybe it's just a tad long for that. Maybe another 5 minutes could have been cut off it somewhere. And most of it is people talking to each other. And I don't know if any of the dialogue was improvised. It has a little feel like it might be. Yeah, and as one of the reviews said, there's not really a likable character in this film. You don't have a viewpoint character that an audience can attach to. And I think that's one of the problems. And yeah, Ralph Meeker, he's thinking about his life choices in this film. But I kind of like it. I'm going to watch some of the other Bill Rebane ones. I haven't watched them yet. But I think based on the Alpha Incident, I'm going to watch the other ones as well. It was one of those things I bought speculatively because I got a deal on it. I can never resist a bargain. This box set's pretty good too. They have a lot of information about Bill Rebane and his career, including he was born in Latvia, so they've got a booklet in there from Latvia to Wisconsin, and it might hit the microphone. They've got a booklet as well from Latvia to Wisconsin. The Song Remains Rebane. Now, I'm not sure who thought up that title, but they probably need to think about their life choices as well. And they've got a poster in here as well. I kind of like these box sets of off-kilter, not terribly successful, but earnest filmmakers like Bill Rebane. So there's that one. That then brought me to some 4Ks. That then brought me to a couple of movies that have been restored on 4K. They're from 1965 and 1966. And I got them for like $2 for $40 on 4K, so I thought I'd pick them up. I don't mind them. I'm not totally in love with the intellectual property they're based on. But the movies are Doctor Who and the Daleks, and Dalek Invasion Earth 2150, both starring Peter Cushing. Now, Doctor Who wasn't the phenomenon it is now back in the 1960s. It was a phenomenon in England, to very much a lesser extent here in Australia, maybe New Zealand, but it wasn't the big IP that it is now. In 1965, the BBC and Terry Nation, who owned the rights to the Daleks, cut a deal with Milton Subotsky, who ran Amicus Films, and they gave him the rights to make 3 movies. They ended up making 2, but they gave him the rights to 3 movies and 3 storylines that had been in the Doctor Who TV series. They sold them to Milton Subotsky for 500 quid, which was nothing really. And so Subotsky decided to make the Doctor Who movies because Daleks were kind of popular in England.
Hello, darling.
Hello. It began just as you see here.
Do you know what you have just done? You have transferred us in time and space, and I hadn't even set the controls. Now I don't know where we are. We could be anywhere in the universe and at any time.
And they got Peter Cushing to play the lead role. And the first one, Doctor Who and the Daleks, both were directed by a guy called Gordon Fleming, who was an English jobbing director. The problem with Doctor Who and the Daleks isn't so much Peter Cushing playing Doctor Who, because he was playing a kind of iteration of the William Hartnell Doctor Who, and took things off differently. This is not considered canon by Doctor Who fans or by the BBC, by the way. So Peter Cushing does a pretty good job playing the kind of scientist who invents a machine called the TARDIS. They travel to Skaros, the world of the Daleks, get involved with the Daleks, and also a humanoid race living on that particular planet. The usual thing, they kind of invade the Dalek headquarters to try to get stuff they need to help the people. The people are being repressed by the Daleks, who also blew things up. There's a lot of radiation on the planet, and everything turns out okay with lots of Daleks blowing up and the natives prevailing with the help of Doctor Who and his team. Now, the problem with this is the supporting main character is a hopeless, hapless, kind of slapstick idiot played by Roy Castle, and he adds no value to anything. He's kind of there because this was supposed to be a kids movie. They wanted something a bit silly, and so he does a lot of pratfalls, and it has a lot of silliness. He's dating one of the Doctor's 2 granddaughters. No idea what happened to the parents, go figure. But yeah, it kind of works well. It's got a certain 1960s aesthetic about it that I like, and the aliens are about at the level of Doctor Who aliens in the TV series at the time. The problem is, this was really popular in England, but Subotsky, being an American originally, wanted to sell it to an American market, and nobody in America knew who Doctor Who was in 1965. So didn't do well. People going, who's this guy? Who are these salt and pepper shakers that keep going around talking in robot voices, all that kind of thing. Didn't do well for that reason. Nonetheless, Subotsky prevailed. He made enough money to prevail and do Dalek Invasion Earth 2150 AD. This one's got a better kind of supporting male character in it, played by Bernard Cribbins, who of course turned up in Doctor Who in the 21st century in one of the iterations in the modern series, and was well loved. And he does pretty well. He plays a police constable who accidentally turns up on the TARDIS. They travel through time, go back to London in 2150, find it all smashed to pieces by the Daleks, and oddly enough they find it looking a little bit like 1960s London, so there's no technological advances by the human race in 150 years. Well, almost 200 years. So yeah, that's a little bit odd. People are driving around in clapped out 1950s vans. All of the signage is advertising from the 1960s because Milton Subotsky cut a deal with a breakfast cereal company to put their advertising stuff on the walls. But Peter Cushing does another good job in this one. Bernard Cribbins is pretty good. The Daleks are a little bit more adept this time, and the second one works really well. Now, the interesting thing was they had to restore these movies, and it was a passion project for a whole bunch of people who were interested in Doctor Who of the time. And so they did a lot of digital repair on it. And that's why we've got it in 4K now. It's one of those things where if it wasn't Doctor Who related, there's no way this would get a 4K release. These two would get a 4K release. But they did, and the restorations are really good. If you like these films, get the 4Ks if you've got a 4K player, for the simple reason it really looks good. The detail at work, and I kind of even did the silly thing of going up and sitting near my screen to take a look at them. The work on that is pretty good. And because I picked them up so cheaply, I don't mind getting them. They're science fiction, so of course if I can get them on 4K cheaply, I'll get them. Didn't really love the movies, but I think that they're part of Amicus for a start, and I do collect Amicus films, so there's nothing bad there. And if you're into Doctor Who, and if you like Peter Cushing stuff, even though this isn't by any means the best Peter Cushing roles in the world, you're going to enjoy getting those movies. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. You can also support the channel by donating at patreon.com/paleocinema. And as I've said a couple of times, for the Patreon supporters only in December, I'm reading A Die Hard Christmas as a video. So I'll read that to the Patreon supporters. So if you want to see me do that, you're going to have to be on the Patreon. Please watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. See what kind of interesting rubbish there is on YouTube. And I'll catch you next time.